Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Best Damn Pod in the Land. I am your host and sports director, Brian Nelson, and with me I have...
The one, the only, wearing the iconic leather jacket, your assistant sports editor, Andy Anders.
And I am the one, the only, assistant sports director, Khalid Hashi.
And I'm your sports editor, Griffin Strom. Brian, what do we have to talk about today?
Other than Khalid ripping my style.
Sorry.
Yeah, I
Swagger Jacker.
got a little copycat like bamboozling going on right here. We have a lot to talk about today, Griffin. Spring football is underway for Ohio State, and men's basketball is still reaching the end of the regular season and had a big game against their arch rival Michigan Wolverines over the weekend. But I think the main thing we're going to talk about first is...
Breaking news!
Khalid, why don't you just take it away?
Ohio State has announced that running back Master Teague, who was supposed to be the favorite to replace J.K. Dobbins, is out for all of spring practice with an injury.
It's fun. It's actually funny that you say that, Khalid, because Ryan Day yesterday in the press conference after the first Ohio State spring practice said that the running back room for Ohio State was probably one injury away from a crisis. And then, lo and behold, the very next
We're
day,
in a crisis, boys.
the crisis has occurred.
No Crowley, no Teague.
Yeah, no Crowley, who was the third most productive running back for Ohio State, and obviously with Dobbins going to the NFL, Teague was going to be the favorite to take that job. I mean, still probably is, but we don't know the extent to his injury.
He was injured last spring, too.
Right. But so now you've got Steele Chambers as the only running back after Demario McCall was switched to wide receiver for at least that first spring practice. He will probably be coming back to running back, just so they can run some drills with the guys at this point. Because
other than walk-ons, they don't have anybody.
Yeah, they've got Steele Chambers still, but
I mean, in Steele Chambers as well.
Their leading rusher from last year, who's actually healthy and practicing, is, lo and behold, Justin Fields.
Yep, that is a fact. He is healthy right now. It would seem.
Yeah, him being healthy is great, but Master Teague being hurt, I mean, he's likely going to be the starter still, as you guys said, but he's definitely someone that we saw at the end of last season, and Khalid in particular was very quick to point this out. He still needs a lot of work and a lot of developing still.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was clear that he was a first year last season, especially in the Fiesta Bowl against Clemson when he came in when J.K. got hurt. He wasn't ready for that big stage.
Yeah.
So
I think it's just easy to see, for people to gloss over, Master Teague looks like he could take over the job from J.K. Dobbins after he leaves because he runs for over 100 yards against teams like Miami of Ohio and FIU and things like that. But when it counted most and he was getting actual meaningful minutes against top defenses, he showed that the production was not there and the level dropped dramatically. So,
and this is kind of the reason that all throughout the season, people would occasionally ask Ryan Day or Tony Alford or whoever it was about their upcoming running back situations in years to come, because the only Ohio State running back in this 2020 class is just a 3-star guy.
Ian Williams. And
who's to say that he won't be the next big running back at Ohio State? But he's not there right now. He was not one of those 14 or 15 mid-year enrollees, so he's not getting kind of the early looks that some other guys are getting. And he is just a 3-star guy, not a super highly touted guy.
Could be the next Chris Olave. You never know.
You never know, but I mean, from the looks
Olave
of it, it's
was
like
a 4-star still. Pretty sure.
No, he's a 3-star.
I feel like he had so much hype coming into his freshman year, though.
No, he was very low.
What year was his commit class again?
He's a junior, so 2018.
I can check quickly. On 247.
Beat you to it, brother.
He
was a 3-star.
Really?
Rated 399th overall nationally.
Well, that's not.
Was the 68th best receiver in this recruiting class.
And now he's leading the charge to a stacked Ohio State receiving room. That room, there's no crisis going on there. That room was just
as strong as can be.
Right. We'll get there later. We'll talk about what Griffin and I got to see at spring practice.
Indeed,
we got to watch an entire Ohio State football practice for the first time in our journalistic careers. A little preview, so stay tuned. Yeah. First, though, basketball.
Yes.
My favorite sport.
Griffin,
basketball,
residing basketball aficionado. Column coming out tomorrow. Tell the people what the Buckeyes are up to.
6'4".
Coming in at 6'4".
Griffin. Take it away.
Oh, yes. And Ohio State basketball is really coming on strong in the end of this season. They've won 8 out of 10 in the Big Ten. As I put in my article today, that's in a conference where 8 of the top 20. It has 8 of the top 25 teams, according to the AP poll right now. And 10 of those 14 Big Ten teams are projected to make it into the NCAA tournament as per Joe Lunardi, the ESPN's bracket master of sorts. And Ohio State just had a big win against Michigan, one that ended up being like a 14-point win. It was closer than that for most of the game. But when you're coming off of the heels of that Maryland win, which was, maybe the most impressive win of their season, except for that Kentucky win now is starting to look good because Kentucky has been super good ever since they lost to Ohio State. They're still up in the top schools. Obviously, that North Carolina win doesn't look like that much right now. But that Maryland win and that Michigan win, back-to-back or 2 out of 3 games. And Ohio State's looking to make a big. They still got number 23 Illinois and number 16 Michigan State to go in the season. So could you imagine if they were to win those 2 games, even if they split those 2 games?
What a way to end the season.
Yeah, really.
Yep.
That'll be a crazy storyline because they started off the season super hot.
They were number 2 in the nation at one point.
Yeah, and then the middle of the season was just kind of like a cluster, just chaos. And then to finish off the season this strong, I don't know, it's just a crazy storyline. But that'd be great for this team because you're heating up at the right time. It's time for March Madness. So leading into the Big Ten tournament, if they have wins against Michigan, Maryland, and Illinois, who's now ranked 23 in the country, and teams like that, that's a good sign going to the Big Ten tournament. Because a couple weeks ago, I think we'd all agree that we had low expectations for the Buckeyes going into the Big Ten tournament. Probably thought maybe they'd lose on day 1 or day 2, but now of the recent play, even with Kyle Young going out, it seems like the Big Ten is wide open and any team can honestly take it.
Yeah, I personally was thinking they might not even make it to the NCAA tournament at one point. I was thinking maybe they'd be a high NIT seed. But, now, depending on how they do in the Big Ten tournament, they could be as high as maybe a 4 seed or whatever.
It's shaping up for as a fun trip for us come next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Big Ten tourney.
Big Ten tourney.
For those wondering, we probably won't be going to the NCAA tourney unless it's close.
There are games in Cleveland. We probably could actually go money-wise. It's just unless it's super far away.
Yeah, it'd have to be
but if it was like a drive,
region?
Yeah.
The thing is, then you're talking about 3 or 4 hotel nights too. That's beside.
But how valuable would it really be to go is more of the question.
Relevant to all of you viewers, though. That is an internal issue.
They're definitely tuning into the Lantern.
Hey, donate in the link below.
Yeah, GoFundMe. We're gonna have to set up a Patreon
for that one commenter out there. That one person who was kind to leave us a comment,
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep those coming our way.
Keep those coming. Keep those coming.
No, it fuels our insatiable egos.
Let's shift. So we're talking about the basketball team, and Dwayne Washington showed up big time against Michigan.
Yes,
this
indeed.
past weekend. I believe he hit 5 of 7 3-pointers.
20 points, yeah.
And was 6 of 14 shooting from the field and lit it up, man.
Yep.
He had that play. Like Andy tweeted, it was the loudest the Shawnee Center has.
Most packed I've ever seen it.
Yeah, it was just the craziest atmosphere.
Maybe, I could spot, I said this in the tweet, I could spot a few seats open in C-Deck.
Bathroom break.
It was literally, the seats that were open were probably just people using the restroom or something.
Right.
That place was filled.
Yeah, that's how it was for Maryland too. So
right,
those Sunday afternoon games and those weekend games in general, people really show out to those in comparison to some others. So it'll be interesting to see what the crowd is on Thursday.
Even the Indiana game was super packed.
Yeah,
going
Illinois
way
is
back.
ranked at senior day. I imagine it'll be a great crowd.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
100%.
But Dwayne Washington, you just said he had 20 points, and that was 20 points, and he didn't score a single point in the last 10 minutes of the game. Yeah. So he did all that work in that period, and then after that, it was really C.J. Walker made a big impact. I think he scored 8 of his 15 points in the final 4 or so minutes, something like that.
And they had what was it? It was a 3-point game at halftime, right? And then Michigan creeped back up to tie the game up at 54 apiece. And then what happened? You had Andre and Caleb Wesson back-to-back have crazy banking deep 3-pointers to set the crowd on fire. And then, like you said, C.J. Walker kind of took it away towards the end of the game and was just making all the right plays. I remember there's one play that specifically that stood out to me was when he drove it to his left side and bounced past behind his back to Caleb Wesson at the 3-point line, and he made that three.
Yep.
And the shot scene just was going crazy over that play.
Yep, 15.7 assists. There was 2 different times when the game was tied, and C.J. Walker hit like a mid-range pull-up jumper 2 different times to give Ohio State the lead, and those shots were huge. Because, as we talked about a lot during that losing skid, for the longest time, it was like, who's going to make that play in a close game at the end of a game? It was like, you didn't think that a guy on Ohio State could do it. It seemed like Caleb Wesson a couple of times missed some big threes late in games, but if Dwayne Washington wasn't hitting, it wasn't him. No DJ Carton now. But now it seems like, C.J. Walker's kind of risen to the occasion recently. He's been averaging...
A little more freedom.
Yeah. And he's averaging 13 some points and 5 assists in his last 4 games, which is really solid for him. And in the 20 games that he played alongside DJ Carton, he was averaging 7.3 points and 3 assists. So think about those. That was the 20 games in his last 4 games. He's almost doubled points and a few more assists as well. So he's been really productive as of late. And as you've seen, it's resulted in a lot of Ohio State wins.
Yeah. The thing me and Brian have been talking about was how C.J. Walker needs to have a better shot selection for this team to succeed. And recently, that mid-range that Griffin was talking about has been so butter lately. Every time it's just kind of come around a pick and just kind of pull up at the elbow, and it's money every time. So that shot's been falling.
Yeah, I think I said we just filmed our 3 key points video for the Illinois game, and I think I said that C.J. Walker needs to be the facilitator of this Ohio State offense. He needs to really create those lanes and create opportunities for people like Caleb Wesson and Dwayne Washington if he's hot. The main thing I'm interested to see, though, is whether this hot streak is going to continue. Maybe not for the Illinois game because they'll still be home.
On the road.
But on the road, what happens when they're facing Michigan State?
Well, I think the interesting thing is Chris Holtmann brought this up after the game, is that he doesn't think their current system is sustainable. They're only rotating 8-9 guys a game with the depth issues.
It was 6.
It was 6 in the second half.
Yeah.
That they rotated. They haven't been playing Justin Ahrens very much, which I don't get personally because of the offense that he brings. And maybe
the defensive end is
the defensive end is the issue. And yes, he has had problems there.
As you've pointed out, Chris Holtmann is a defensive-minded coach.
Right. As much as he won't say it, Chris Holtmann has shown to be. And most good coaches their teams are good defensively, right? That's just a quality of a good coach. They tend to play good defense, and they won't play you if you don't play good defense. But still, I think Ahrens should see some more minutes, especially when you're talking about some of the depth issues they've had. But he's said that what they're doing right now isn't sustainable. And I think part of that is the struggles we saw from Caleb Wesson through most of the game. Obviously, he ended with 14 points.
Yeah.
But that first half, he looks soft.
Yeah. Wasn't finishing anything at the rim.
No, he was falling away from shots that he should have been bowling his chest and getting into. I don't know if maybe it was that early illegal screen. Maybe he was scared of picking up a second foul in that first half. Because 30 seconds in he gets that first foul, obviously.
Which you got to give him the benefit of the doubt because
I mean, for most of the season, he's been willing to finish strong at that root hoop. I feel like at least stronger than he was trying to finish against Michigan. So I think the key for Ohio State is I think the guard play that they've gotten these past few games from Luther, CJ, and Dwayne is going to fall back a little bit. You're not going to be getting 20 from Dwayne and 15 from CJ and consistent knockdown shooting from Luther all the time.
Yeah, he had 10 too.
When that happens, is Caleb going to be at his normal best through the whole game? And Caleb's defense, I'll say, though, has been substantially it's been great through the entire season. His defense, his rebounding was still at a decent level.
He had 9. He
had 9 boards.
Yeah, led the team.
He had 18 a couple games ago.
Right.
Which is insane. He also seems to take a charge every single game. I think he had 2 against Michigan. But that man is taking charges all the time, and that's a sign of somebody that's working on defense. Nobody wants to get run over and taking a charge. You're putting yourself out there to get knocked on your behind, and he's been more than willing to do that all season.
Right. So the other aspects are there. If the scoring is there for Caleb and the guards can continue to produce at a similar level to what they've been doing, I don't think they'll continue at this level. But this can make either a Big Ten tourney run or an NCAA tourney run. We said at the beginning of the year that Sweet 16 was kind of sealing the goal for this team. In January, we didn't think it was happening. Back to a place now where I definitely think it could happen, maybe even further, depending on if they get hot, because they have the capability to play with some real teams.
Not only that, just all around the AP Top 25 poll, like there's not a lot of teams where you're like, oh, this team is scary. This is a team that you really don't want to face.
There's a lot of parity in college basketball.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting, even in the discussions that we've been having about like planning like the Big Ten tournament trip, and even talking about the NCAA tournament, like just even like last week or whatever, like not too long ago, it's been like, oh, like they might not even go very far in the Big Ten tournament. Like we might like be leaving that early. But now like these last couple weeks here, it's been like I'm starting to think like, man, I think they got a better shot to get a little deeper than we might have just been thinking.
This team,
that Maryland win really was what set it for me.
I think this team has I think they're too hot right now to lose in the first game. Like they're going to be playing, whoever they're going to be playing. They're going to be playing at a lower seed in that first game, right? Because they're not getting to the double bye, but they have the single bye.
Could be playing what, like Michigan again?
Right now they'd be playing, I don't know. But
they're 7 right now.
So regardless, they're going to be playing a lower seed in that first round. I don't see them dropping a game to a lower seed just because they've closed the year pretty hot. As long as they split this weekend with Illinois and Michigan State. They win one of those two games, they'll have the momentum they need to enter the Big Ten tourney with some steam. And I think they will win one of those two games. I think they'll win Thursday for sure. But now you've got that steam rolling, and this team, if anything, has been all over the place this year. You wonder if they'll sustain this level of play through the rest of the season. They're capable of winning the Big Ten tourney. I wouldn't be surprised if they won the Big Ten tourney.
They are capable of doing it. I think they really need Kyle Young back if they want to have that long-term success that people are kind of starting to expect from them now.
Yeah.
Because he's a huge part of the team, both offensively and defensively. And he would solve their rotation issues in terms of, sustaining everything. For if they were to make a run to the Sweet 16, I think they would have to do it with Kyle Young.
I'll just throw this out there. Ohio State is currently the number 7 seed in the Big Ten. They would be matched up with number 10, which is Purdue, which I think is definitely a favorable matchup for Ohio State, given how that first game with the two of them went.
Yeah.
That was pretty one-sided, if I remember correctly, wasn't it? They ran away with it.
Yeah, they ran away at the end. Purdue really only had one player who could consistently score as well.
Yes.
Boudreaux, who fouled out. And then they had another guy who got like 12 points.
Proctor had 15.
15, that's right.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see how they do in more of a neutral site setting for the Big Ten tournament instead of being at home, because that game was at home for Ohio State. So
and we know how good they've been at home compared to the road this year.
Yeah, I mean, they played well on the road against Nebraska, but it's Nebraska, so
right.
I don't really put much stock into that. Although it was a 21-point win, so
they have Michigan State coming up on the road. So
yeah, that's a big test. Big test.
That's why I think they might split these next two. I think they've been 15-2 at home. You know what I mean? Like I think they're winning. I think they're beating Illinois strictly off the strength of that they've been so good at home. They've only lost 2 games at home.
Yeah, just in general, the Big Ten has been lights out at home.
Yeah, and they barely lost the 2 games that they lost at home. They lost by 4 to Wisconsin, and they lost by like 3 on like a last second shot to Minnesota at home. So I think they're winning at home on Thursday. And then I think they might just drop the last one to Michigan State.
What's Michigan State's record at home?
I'm sure it's very good. They're the number 5 seed right now in the Big Ten. What's insane is that Wisconsin is the number 2 seed in the Big Ten.
Wisconsin they're ranked now. I mean, so Wisconsin started playing well as soon as conference play started, essentially.
Yeah.
Like they had a rough start to the year, and then ever since then they've just been consistent, and they've just been winning. Like they beat Ohio State twice.
Right. I think Ohio State could definitely beat Wisconsin though. And that's why if they won that first game, they would play Wisconsin in the second game.
11-3. Michigan State's 11-3.
Yeah.
At home.
At home, yeah.
The only matchup that scares me for Ohio State is Iowa because of Luka Garza.
Yeah, because they only play
Garza's just
time.
a mismatch for their entire team.
Is just too much.
Yeah.
Because if you think about Ohio State's wins and losses in the Big Ten, like they avenged their loss against Maryland. I personally think that they could definitely beat Wisconsin because they only lost by 4 the one time, and I don't think Wisconsin's actually that good. Penn State they already beat, though it was much earlier in the season. Then Michigan they beat twice.
Michigan State's an interesting matchup, always is.
Yeah.
Michigan State's also kind of hot right now. They beat Iowa and went on the road and beat Maryland.
Yeah, that was Maryland's only loss at home this season.
I might be more scared by Michigan State, Iowa, and Penn State than even Maryland. Personally,
I'd agree with that.
For Ohio State.
Especially because Ohio State always struggles against guards who can pull up off the dribble and hit a three, a.k.a. Marcus Carr. So that will be interesting.
Yeah. The one person on Ohio State's team that I think I'm just not worried about in any capacity for the rest of the season is Andre Wesson. I feel like he's going to be the one person, regardless of how the team is actually
You know what
playing.
you're getting from him.
Yeah, you know what you're getting from him. He's just going to be consistent, and I think that'll be a difference maker, especially if someone like Luther or Dwayne is shooting well. As long as Andre is producing, I think they can go far.
Yeah, and I know we talked a lot about the whole like home versus away thing and how Andre was like one of the only players that kind of had a consistency home and away. But I was looking today because we were talking so much about how in January they struggled so much, but in February and early March they've been great. And Andre actually was scoring more points in January than he has been in the last couple months. So that just goes to show like he's really not flapped by much. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that definitely goes to back up what Brian said about him being one of the more dependable guys on the team.
Mm-hmm. So, and I'm curious to see how Ohio State will match up against Illinois because their leading scorer is a guard who's shooting 48% from the field. Like Khalid and I were talking about him in our 3 key points video. So plug. Go watch it. It's good content. But he has some pretty interesting numbers. Ayo Dosunmu.
He's what, 6'5"?
6'5", 185 pounds. A sophomore, he's averaging 16 points per game.
I think Ohio State has an answer for him, though, and his name is Luther Muhammad, who's been shutting down pretty much every big guard that's been coming to Columbus.
That is true.
The latest one was, what was it, Anthony Cowan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
Xavier Simpson.
Yeah.
Was he matched up with him?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's been playing really well recently, though.
Cowan, Simpson, yeah.
He got injured against Michigan State and then sat out a game against Rutgers. But since he came back, they've been on a 4-game winning streak. Mm-hmm. He scored 24 in a win against Penn State, and Penn State was I think number 9 in the country at that time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then Nebraska and Northwestern aren't that good, but he scored 17 in a close win against Indiana. So if they shut him down, if Luther Muhammad can shut him down, I think Ohio State wins this game. And even then, if he plays well, the home factor might be the difference maker.
Exactly. That's what I think.
All right.
Yeah.
So we've talked about basketball.
We have.
Now
That is true.
that is a fact.
That is a fact.
That is an undeniable fact. We have talked about the sport of basketball. Now, Griffin and I had our first sneak peek at the new look. New and, I'm not going to say improved, but the new. Who's to say if they're improved?
It's too
not
soon
saying
to
they're
tell.
not improved, but not saying they are either. The 2020 Ohio State Buckeyes. We got to watch a full practice, which is something. This will be my 3rd year covering Ohio State football. Not officially yet, but there's a good chance I'll be on the beat next year. That's a little on the DL secret for you podcast watchers.
For those of you listening,
Yeah.
comment down below if you want to see
all
that next year.
all like 40 to 50 of you.
Little on the DL.
5 of which are me making sure the video is like working audio wise.
And then the rest are just Brian's parents looping the video back.
Absolutely.
on different computers.
Are you saying your parents don't watch it, Griff?
My dad has absolutely no idea.
My parents know about it. I think they've watched it before, but they don't watch. I don't know if they watch it anymore. But we got to see our first look at the Ohio State Buckeyes. Like I was saying, this will be my 3rd year covering Ohio State football. It's my 3rd spring at least. Have never had an entire practice open to watch other than Student Appreciation Day, which isn't. It's kind of a condensed practice where they do a few special things. So, Griffin, first impressions of what we saw.
Yeah, and I know a lot of times what might be the most appropriate thing to say is that how much should you really be taking away from watching a spring practice? I don't know. I mean, I was there for some spring stuff last year, and I know they did a lot of like 2 tight end stuff, a lot of throwing to the tight end that you didn't actually see.
Schematically, you really can't take that much away, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to show anything to the media. But guys stand out. Like
Right, and that's what we did see, and that's what I wrote about yesterday. Was a couple highlights, a couple things that made you say wow a little bit, and a lot of those. I would say the main person that stood out in my mind was Jackson Smith in Jigba.
Yeah.
Who I know he wasn't he wasn't the headline of Ohio State's big wide receiving recruiting class. That would be Julian Fleming, but I think he was kind of the headline of the group yesterday, just in terms of he made a few just absolutely gorgeous catches on either sideline. It didn't really matter who was throwing him the ball, with defenders draped all over him. And a couple times they targeted him was some of the more contact heavy plays. I think on that one where
he had one where he leaped up and two-handed snagged one, like drug the toes against the sideline when we were watching right in front of us. We were close to the action. Sometimes had to dodge contact.
Sometimes dangerously close. Right. One time a ball was thrown directly to me.
And instead of
Griffin
catching
dangerous
it
throw him here
and showcasing the skills to get his contract, he ducked out of the way of it. Like a pansy.
True basketball player.
Yeah.
You had nothing in your hands. Don't lie to the people.
It was coming at me like a heat-seeking missile, man.
It was bouncing.
No, it came straight from the air.
It was bouncing. Griff, you're a basketball player. Come on, man.
It did not
It
bounce.
bounced. It went over your head. I was watching the whole thing.
Live.
You weren't even watching that closely, so you missed the bounce.
On Lantern Television.
Unfortunate.
If I would have caught it, they would have told me to get that man some pads. That's what they would have been saying.
Get him a scholarship for his final couple of weeks here.
But Jackson made a really nice grab up the sideline right in front of us, where he went up with two hands as he was being contacted by a corner, came down with it, drug the toes the whole 9 yards, had another one-hander going to the ground, just made it look easy, just right in. And he was known for his high volume of receptions in high school.
Yes.
Over 2,000 yards receiving in a season, which is ridiculous to think about. And then I think he broke both the Texas State receiving yards and receptions record, right? If I remember correctly. Maybe even touchdowns. Something like
Probably.
that. Which is, Texas is obviously maybe the number one football state in the country. So that's saying something.
Yeah.
But I agree, was the biggest standout for me. Someone who surprised me a little bit, I think there were a few. C.J. Stroud looked pretty good throwing the ball.
Yes.
Every single ball was on that Warren Moon type, real tight spiral. An old reference for those of you who know who Warren Moon is.
Google him.
What?
Google him.
Google him if you don't. Watch the best spiral in football history. In my opinion.
But that's music to a lot of Ohio State fans' ears because
there's a good chance he'll be the backup this year.
Backup situation last year compared to this year.
Don't get your hopes up too high because he's a true freshman, right? But maybe a guy who could turn out to be a competent backup if Justin has to leave a game for some reason, could maybe manage. And for the future of the program, obviously, it's very important that he develops.
Yes.
It was good to see he had some real zip on some of his throws and a really tight spiral that he throws. And you'll see him in the spring game, too. I'm sure he'll be playing there. He was the leading backup. Ronnie Hickman also surprised me. Didn't play at all last season because of his injury. Seemed to be keeping up with a lot of really quality receivers on the sidelines, playing cornerback mostly. The Rocket, they call him. Not sure if he's going to try and make some strides in the defensive back competition, which is obviously the most open competition this year.
He did have that one interception that was right on our sideline.
Right, that too. Who had 2 interceptions? It was
Seven Banks.
Seven Banks is the runaway favorite to be the number 2 corner alongside Wade.
Yeah.
So
especially after everything that's occurred
off the field.
Off the field with Amir Eap and Jocelyn Went.
Yes. And a pretty depleted Buckeye secondary kind of showed up at spring practice, given that no Josh Proctor. Cam Brown was limited. Sean Wade was on the sideline for most of the time. So Seven Banks kind of had an opportunity to shine there, and he did get. Ryan Day was asked about him afterwards. He said Ryan Day wasn't ready to give him all the props yet, though. He said he has to step up. This is the period where he has to start stepping up. They wanted to see if he's willing to take that next step. He wasn't ready to say that he's there yet. He's saying this is the period where he can prove himself into being one of that next super solid Ohio State corner to go alongside of Sean Wood.
Also mentioned a couple names that we haven't really talked about much. Marcus Hooker was one that he brought up, that they brought up unprompted as someone who needs to step up this season. Who was
Marcus Williamson?
And Williamson, yeah, he said Marcus Hooker and Marcus Williamson were the two guys that you don't normally think about in this competition. But I think Hooker's got an outside shot, especially if they go to too high this year, which has been discussed, and I could see happening if you go to too high, maybe someone sees more reps in that safety role, that second safety role. Someone else who really stood out, who was I thinking of? Go to
secondary?
Oh, Harry Miller. That's who I wanted to talk about. Harry Miller has been moved to guard. Seems the clear-cut favorite to actually replace Jonah Jackson at that position from center. Day said that the usual quote, they want the 5 best offensive linemen on the field. That's what we hear every spring from the Ohio State coaching staff.
And give him some high praise.
From Meyer to Day. Yeah, Harry, he was giving Harry some high praise in that presser.
Could be the Billy Price and...
Yeah, he compared him to Billy Price,
lines.
Corey Lindsley.
Like, slide back over to center after Josh Myers leaves, because obviously that's his position for right now. But he seems to have already earned the tied moniker of 4th best lineman on the team. That's what Day said.
Right. That is what he said, yeah.
He said he hopes, but essentially saying he is the 4th best lineman on the team. And then they're going to figure out that number 5 spot at right tackle, which was rotated between Nicholas Petit-Frere, upcoming redshirt sophomore, who I think we expect to win the job over true freshman 5-star Paris Johnson. Petit-Frere was also a 5-star.
Yeah, Petit-Frere was a 5-star that Urban really was excited to have, too.
Right.
Yep.
So, I mean, offensive line is like the one part of the team, like along with wide receiver, that I'm just not worried about because there's so much talent there.
And quarterback, obviously.
Quarterback, obviously, but just like, you look at like who's going to be starting. I mean, you got
returning All-American Wyatt Davis. You've got returning first-team All-Big Ten Josh, well, not first-team, second-team All-Big Ten Josh Myers.
And Thayer Munford.
And Thayer Munford, who was second-team All-Big Ten.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think Myers should be a Remington candidate this year. He'll be a stud. Obviously, Davis was an All-American. So those 3 spots will be rock solid for Ohio State. And if Petit-Frere lives up to his 5-star hype and Harry Miller lives up to his 5-star hype, like the 2 replacements are 5 stars.
Yeah.
So
and if Petit-Frere doesn't work out, you have another 5-star to step in and fill that void.
The only question mark, I think, is guard depth. If one of Harry Miller or Wyatt Davis goes down, or if Harry Miller, being a second-year player who's changing positions, maybe has some struggles, who's going to replace him at guard? I think you might look at Matthew Jones, who's also a converted center from last year at that point. But who else beyond that, then?
Josh Albee.
Albee's graduated.
Right? Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't think Cup graduated too, didn't he?
I think so.
I gotta look at their the rest of their roster.
Yeah. But speaking of some of those graduated guys, a few of the guys were actually came back to watch some of the practice. Brandon Bowen was there. Devon Hamilton was there. A few other guys. That was kind of interesting to see. Those guys go from. We were just covering those guys on the team, and now they're kind of coming back.
Gavin Cupp's still there.
Gavin Cupp is still there, but he wasn't even mentioned by.
He's a graduate.
Yeah, he's a redshirt senior.
But no, like you said, it was interesting to see them back, especially like very shortly after the scouting combine.
Yeah,
that just wrapped up with Davon Hamilton and Malik Harrison and those guys all participating in Indy. And I know, Brian, you wanted to talk a little bit about the scouting combine.
Yeah,
you had a couple takeaways.
I mean, NFL Combine, it's a big fun part of the year, and we're all excited to see, where the players from Ohio State that we covered are going to end up. I mean, Chase Young is obviously going to go probably 2nd overall, and Jeff Okudah, I mean,
projected
to go third. But, you got players like Malik Harrison, Devon Hamilton. You don't know where they're going to end up. But
Malik Harrison and Damon Arnett pretty much.
Yeah,
they've been in a lot of second-round mock drafts for a lot of teams. So those are 2 guys. Also, J.K. Dobbins is kind of like borderline first-round, early second-round right now.
Yeah.
But that running back situation is kind of like all over the place because a lot of scouts really don't know if it's Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins, or Swift from Georgia.
Right.
So
DeAndre Swift, yeah.
So, there's 5 guys at least who could potentially go in the first 2 rounds. So the scouting combine was a big day for a lot of them, even though the top 2 guys didn't really participate as much. Chase Young didn't do anything because he has nothing to a show
Nothing
these
to
guys.
prove. Why
Yeah.
risk injury?
Exactly. And
Yep.
then Jeffrey Okudah, people could say the same with him. Like, you have nothing to prove. You're a top defensive back. But he said that the reason why he's participating in everything is because he has Patrick Peterson and Jalen Ramsey's numbers on his wall. And he wants to one day be an inspiration to the next generation so that they could look back at Jeffrey Okudah's numbers from the Scouting Combine and chase that. So he wanted to participate, but his day was ended short after falling in one of the drills and kind of having a little scare moment by landing on his neck. But he did tweet out that he is all good over there, so nothing to worry about over there with that injury. But, yeah, Scouting Combine, there's a couple Buckeyes who definitely performed and did well, so the draft coming up, it's going to be interesting to see where they fall.
Yeah, 100%. And J.K. Dobbins also did not participate at all.
Right.
Because he is still kind of like limited by that ankle injury.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's
But he did have some things to say to Clemson, though, saying that his injury was the reason why Ohio State lost, and that had he not gone down, he was very, very confident in his press conference saying that Ohio State would have beaten him. So that was
I mean, still almost if Justin Fields would have checked it down to him again when they're on
Yeah,
that
if he
last
would've just
drive,
caught
man,
that.
he was getting the.
Or
yeah.
you don't check down,
Yeah.
unless the post route isn't there,
Not
which the
even that,
post
maybe
route
if he
was
would've-
there.
If he would have caught the ball in the end zone,
That's true.
when they bobbled that, and then they had to settle for a field goal.
Yeah.
Well, they'd have been down.
Or if
In
that
the end
second.
zone?
Oh no, because
In
wait.
the first half.
But
when
I'm
they settled-
saying, but I'm saying they lost by 5. It
6.
was 29-24.
Was it?
I feel like it might have
was
been
6.
23, 29.
Was it 29?
Come on, man. I'm 2-0 against you today.
No,
baby.
you're no
Stop.
29-23.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right.
But yeah, and then Jonathan.
And
he
then
also-
they didn't go
there
for
was,
2.
there was also that one.
But I'm saying they were down by 6, so I don't know if 4 extra points by J.K.
No,
touching the
I'm saying like
touchdown.
the momentum of the game could have went differently had they.
Scored touchdowns.
Yeah,
and
Yeah,
they were
exactly.
I mean, you
about
also
that.
look at the second breakaway run that J.K. Dobbins had, where he got like tackled
Yeah.
but right before he got to the
So
end
I
zone.
don't know. I kind of agree. Like J.K. was a big part in that first half. What was it like? They were leading by 6. What was it? 16.
Yeah.
So,
16-0.
so had he been healthy, you never know. But hey,
Yeah.
that's a story that.
Well,
Ohio
if
State
he doesn't get
fans-
his ankle rolled up on too in that game,
Yeah.
in the middle of that game.
No, that's what he's saying. So he was saying if I wasn't hurt, but
Especially because Ohio State's offense stalled majorly once Master T came in the second half, as we brought up.
yeah.
That was
8 yards on 9 carries.
What's even more interesting is that JK had a lot of shots to fire in this press conference. That's pretty much all he could do. And somebody asked him between him and Jonathan Taylor, who's a top back, and if that rivalry has been settled or whatever. And he says, well, I think it's been settled because I've never lost to him.
Right.
And he was very bold, but I liked it. He brought some.
Yeah, I saw some people kind of trolling in the Twitter comments with that, saying like, "Oh, but your team winning doesn't mean anything in that matchup. Like, look at their numbers."
Yeah.
To which I would say, well,
He's
look at their
outperformed
numbers.
them.
Look at their numbers
in
either
the
way.
Head-to-head matchups because Dobbins got the better of him
On less
significantly
carries.
in each game. So
yeah.
I don't know.
Especially like when they played in Columbus during that weather, Dobbins played much better.
Wisconsin's defense was ranked higher.
Yeah.
Not only that, think about the
Wisconsin's
offenses.
defense was number 1 in the country, both passing and running wise, heading into that game.
Uh-huh.
Not only that, but think about the offenses. Wisconsin is not really known for passing the ball, and you have an Ohio State offense where last
Heisman
year,
finalist.
they threw for 50 passing touchdowns, and this year Justin Fields threw for like 37 or something passing touchdowns. So the fact that he still almost performed just as well as Jonathan Taylor on less carries, something to
Buckeyes,
note.
man. Something
Yeah.
about them Buckeyes.
Yeah.
100%.
About them Buckeyes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the running back competition kind of plays out with Master Teague out, because you don't know who's really going to fit it. You have an offensive line that they can use to kind of build around whoever gets the starting role.
Yeah,
and
I
I
was
think
gonna say.
that's going to be the main strength for this Ohio State offense, aside from having Justin Fields. I'm talking specifically just about the running game here. That might be the key factor that might lead to someone like Master Teague or Seal Chambers or Marcus Crowley to being, the next J.K. Dobbins or the next Ezekiel Elliott.
I would put any of them in that category. But
I wouldn't either, but you never know. I'm
Yeah,
saying that might
Williams.
it could keep them from being a detriment to Justin Fields and the
Right.
offense to being solid contributors.
So actually, on that note, Brian,
Okay.
I had this question proposed to me by a roommate today. and I wanted to propose it to you all, mainly Khalid, because he always has these hot takes. He says that J.K. Dobbins is the best Ohio State running back since Eddie George, and that he's number 3 all time behind Archie and Eddie. Personally, I
still
put
think
him behind Zeke.
I still think
I
Zeke's
put him
better.
behind Zeke, and I know J.K. had slightly better numbers, but Zeke in that 2015 season underutilized behind. I don't know. The O-line was good in 2015, but they certainly weren't this year's O-line. So I would still put Zeke ahead of him, but I put Zeke 3rd behind Archie Eddie, and then I put Dobbins
right,
4th
yeah.
all time. I think in
And I
saying
think
he's a
he's a
top
lock,
5, considering Ohio State's running back history, saying Dobbins is a top 5 back all time for Ohio
Top
State's
4.
kind of a big
Like,
deal.
There is an 05 that
Well, you have a Heisman winner, Hopalong Cassidy, in there.
he's JK. I'm still taking JK.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah, so.
I mean, there's other guys that people could argue for.
I'll
as
say
well.
this.
I think
think
Beanie
Zeke-
Wells, Carlos
yeah.
Hyde.
None
just
of
from
them
this
are touching J.K.
Just from
Dobbins,
this decade alone, at least.
Yeah. So it's very deep, but I think
Tim Spencer, Keith Byers.
yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's
But-
very close though between Zeke Elliott and J.K. Dobbins, but I'm still giving that to Zeke.
That playoff run, that end of the season, that postseason run
When it
from
mattered
Zeke
most, man.
was just absolutely
Was 200 yeah.
absurd.
Yeah, well, I mean,
that's what won him the
80
championship.
Dobbins could have had that same. He had
Yeah.
a similar
He started
run.
off like that.
Yeah.
85 yards,
finish it, though.
85
Yeah.
yards through the heart of the South. That's what that
Now
place
we
is
look
known
forward to
as.
seeing what he's gonna do at the next level.
We already know what Zeke's doing there.
Here's a question, kind of building off this. Do you think J.K. Dobbins will be as successful in the NFL as Ezekiel Elliott's been?
That I don't know.
That's hard to say. I mean,
He has to
Zeke's
go to the
been the
right
best
system.
running back in the league, kind of. At least one, you could argue after Le'Veon left.
Yeah, but with the running back situation in the NFL, it's really all about like what system you're in. Like
Right,
JK
you got to be
has
in a
to go
system
to
that
the
runs
right
the ball
team.
well, that has a great offensive
So once
line.
he gets drafted, I'll be able to have a better answer for you.
I don't know. The
Zeke's
other
kind
thing
of
is though,
another tier,
McCaffrey's
though, in
system.
terms
is
of-
that
Yeah,
In terms of prospects, Zeke was kind of in another
he was
class.
Yeah.
Like, what was he like?
4th overall.
Yeah,
Fourth overall,
and
right
Dobbins
behind-
is kind of in a more.
right behind
I think
Bosa.
Zeke's a better receiving back too, which helped
Yeah.
than Dobbins is.
I'll say Zeke's better.
I mean, he
at
just
pretty much
look at-
everything.
Not that Dobbins is a bad receiver, but
Yeah, but,
Zeke
I mean-
was an elite receiver as a back.
Does like Zeke drop the passes that Dobbins dropped in the Fiesta Bowl?
Wow, shots fired.
That was a dive. That one was
Oh,
a diving
man.
catch.
Yeah, I'm about to say let's not go that.
Well, I don't know
Yeah,
about that.
Andy
one.
asked for hot takes. I'm just
There
bringing them.
it is. No, I'm not dogging you.
JK, if you're looking with where to find this man, he's located in the journalism building on the 2nd floor. Okay.
It's 2 thumbs up. JK, Brian's like, JK, come find me.
With a shirt on,
Why-
just like, what's up?
Why Davis can show him the way he has a class with Nicole.
Yeah. Wyatt Davis has class right next door to us, fun fact.
Wyatt Davis and Tyler Friday.
Uh-huh.
So
Well, that's it though.
yeah, no, absolutely though. So, unless there's anything else that you guys want to talk about,
I'm
covered
good to
it
go,
all, brother.
baby.
good to go. All right.
Griffin is already 1 foot out.
Yeah, he's already 1 foot out the door. You know. All right. Well, thank you very much for watching another episode of the Best Damn Pod in the Land. Stay tuned for coverage of both the Illinois games and the Michigan State game, and continued coverage for spring football for Ohio State. And we'll be back next week. Well, actually, no, we won't because of spring break. So we'll be back in a couple weeks to recap the Big Ten tournament and preview March Madness. Stay tuned. Peace.